People don't leave companies. They leave cultures where they don't feel valued. Welcome to the Appreciation at Work podcast, where we share real stories from leaders building workplaces that teams don't want to leave. I'm your host, Dr. William Attaway. I'm excited today to have Melanie Bazile on the podcast. Melanie is the Director of Innovation and Expansion at Compass, where they provide supported and independent living services for adults with disabilities. Melanie, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I would love to start with you sharing a little bit of your story with our listeners, Melanie. Tell us about you, what you do, and how appreciation fits into this.
Well, so you mentioned we provide services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and everyone that we support lives in their own home, in their community. And Compass has been around. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. And
Awesome.
my role as Director of Innovation and Expansion is really just looking at how do we keep doing the next best thing. And all of our services, all of our folks really dive into excellence and they work very hard. We have people that are working in the field directly with people in their homes. And then we have a large layer of leadership that are then doing all of the behind the scenes. And of course, engagement and retention are the two most important things to making sure that those services are excellent. So part of my role is looking at where we can find some pilots and the space to keep doing that better and finding out really what the keys are to being here another 30 years. So that's the fun part of my job. And the way we got connected with Languages of Appreciation is that when I first came to the organization about 11 years ago, the owners of Compass were using some language that I just wasn't familiar with at the time. And it was really around love languages. And it was like just part of their vocabulary. So the owners of Compass are married and they run the organization together. And so they used it in their own language quite a bit. And one day I just stopped and was, what is this? What are you talking about? What's going on here? And so they shared the book, recommended that I read it. So I picked up a copy. Just for me personally, a lot of light bulbs came on. At the time, my kids were junior high and high school age. And so that's where I really started using that was with my kids. And it just made so much sense to me. And then it couldn't help but trickle into my teams that I was supervising. And at that time, I was actually leading teams. I wasn't in the position I am now. So I was overseeing services and the team of people that were directly responsible for those services. So we just started seeing the connection and I started doing a little bit more research about, okay, what does love languages look like at work? Because, our HR department was like, hey, that touch thing, that language of touch, not happening here. And so I was like, well, there has to be an adaptation. And so found Languages of Appreciation and went ahead and took the process to go through to become a trainer. And over time, have really worked hard at embedding it into our culture and seeing what it would look like if it was part of our system and not just a book that the executive team read and enjoyed. So we've spent a solid, I'd say 5 years working on that system, if you will, and then seeing what the payoff has been.
So let's talk. I want to dive into a couple of things there. Making something part of your culture, making it part of your DNA takes time. And we know this is not done with a one-off. This is not done with, we're going to have a meeting. We're going to all read a book and then everything is going to be fine. That's not how that works.
Right.
You said 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Did it take 5 years for it to really become part of the culture?
I would say yes, because, it sort of started with our leadership team. At that time, our executive team was a little bit smaller. And we did have to kind of sell the team on anything that we bring into the culture from outside. That's one of the things I think that's great about our team is they're very protective of the culture that they've spent, 30 years building. And so it took some time just to get the buy-in completely from the team, not on the concept, because everybody understood the concept and agreed with languages of appreciation and saw that it could really have benefit in terms of filtering down to our field staff, but they needed buy-in around systems and what time it would take and wanted to feel confident that it was sustainable.
Yeah.
Our organization is spread out over multiple regions. Geographically, we cover the whole state of California. And so that means we're doing a lot of remote supervision. And we have this commitment to making sure that whether you get services in Southern California or Northern California, you know exactly what it is that you're going to get. So starting with that, buy in first took a little bit of time. And then, in order to embed it into the culture, we had to make sure we were communicating it really well and consistently. And, they say you have to communicate something 7 times. I feel like in our organization, it was times 10 of that. It was just really needing to make sure it was in all of the conversations and developing sort of the shared language. And then the process of sharing stories took time, right? So, decent sized organization. And in this process, we were also scaling and had some really aggressive growth. So that meant, sort of having to start over in ways we would expand into a new region. And even though it was part of the system, then we sort of had to get buy in there and make sure the language was the same in all of those areas. So, in my mind, it really did take that long for us to have it be part of the culture.
That's intimidating for a lot of people. I heard someone say one time based on the research that it's 7 years to really change a culture, to turn it. Kudos, you beat that. So, well done. But I know in the middle of that, it can feel like, "My goodness, how many times do I have to say this?" Like you say, 70 times it felt like.
Right.
Over communication is so critical when it comes to
Yeah.
cultural change.
Right.
But now on this side of it, like, it sounds like you're really glad you went through that messy middle.
Yeah. I mean, it's an investment, right? And what is more important within your organization than the culture? So,
Yeah.
for me, taking 5 years to really embed that into the culture is just a very small investment. So we are glad. We definitely have seen an increase in engagement with our employees. And, you have to kind of look at it at different levels. The return on that investment in our leadership teams has been really, really high. But the larger we get, the harder it is, the more challenging is to make sure that that continues to trickle all the way down to our field staff. And when there is consistency, and that's maybe the most intimidating piece, when you're consistently implementing those systems, we see a return on that investment with our field staff as well.
Mm. Yeah, in your industry, churn is a problem, turnover because of the intensity of what you're
Yeah,
dealing with. Have you
it's
seen this
the
have an impact
problem.
on that?
Yes. And I mean, I'll be honest and say, we go after retention and turnover in lots of different ways because it is
For
the
sure.
number one problem that we deal with. And not only is it an economic problem with the cost of turnover and training, but it's a service related, a quality related problem for us. I mean, the people that we're serving, a lot of them, when they experience a change in their support team, it's almost like experiencing a loss and they grieve that loss. And then people are sort of learning their whole life anew. And so it is the one of the most important things in terms of delivering quality services. So I don't know that we have efficiently analyzed, if our engagement is high and our turnover has decreased, that it is, only one element that has impacted that. But I will say we definitely have seen that increase in engagement, and people have said, when we do, so one of the things that we do is after we onboard somebody, we have these sort of checkpoints in their employment journey where different departments are following up with people because we want it's the stay interview,
Mhm.
is basically what we're looking at. And people pretty consistently say they really thought it was interesting that they were asked as part of their hiring process and their onboarding process what their language of appreciation was. And many people, when we ask them that, they don't know what it is. And we'll have them, take the survey. And people have communicated that just being asked demonstrated a piece of our culture to them that they were really excited about. So we can see that return starting right when we've hired them. So just kind of following that down the line. So that's a reason why people are staying. And then we've sort of taken the appreciation and looked at what's the difference between appreciation and recognition, and then tried really hard to have it be a holistic approach instead of just your typical recognition, which of course we have. We have performance reviews, and we've got awards and things where people are earning it based on very specific performance.
Yeah.
But, acknowledging that's really only a percentage of that motivation, and adding in the appreciation level to that. And we know that is making a difference with people staying as well.
Mm, I love that. In the process of doing this and of seeing an organization change in this cultural way, what were some of the biggest challenges or roadblocks that you hit along the way?
I'd say the number one challenge is consistency and bandwidth because we were publicly funded. All of our funding comes from either state or federal funds. And that means we're expected to be good stewards with very little resources. And I wouldn't say, we pay the most. People don't get into this field because they, think they're going to be a millionaire. They get into it because they have passion, they have heart, and they have a really strong why. So that does mean that, people are doing a lot with very little. And so we're just trying to use appreciation as a way to sort of be one of these intrinsic or, not so tangible benefits to people. And that means a lot of our leaders, especially, are carrying a lot and they're dealing with crisis on a daily basis. And so convincing them that it's a really good investment and use of their energy and time to do something outside of putting the fire out was a challenge for a long time, which is why we actually spent a little bit more time building it in terms of language than specific requirements. So we played around in our pilot with requiring certain things from supervisors, and we found that we actually got better results when we didn't give them another task, another burden, another deadline, and instead just worked really hard in terms of demonstrating it for them and to them and having them experience it as a leader.
That's
So that
good.
meant our executive team and those upper layers of management had to be modeling that. And so sort of removing those one more thing to do requirements actually made a bigger difference. But I'll say as we've grown, and we had sort of our initial system where, we offered it in training, and we sort of have like this list of all the places we want to make sure that it shows up so that we are consistent. And then as we've grown and scaled, there's times where we're just not as effective at that. And, we might be dealing with something, so we let it lapse a little bit and it's not in front of us the way it should be. And then we're sort of playing catch up and running back and saying, hey, why aren't we seeing this in this region or in this team? And then recognizing probably has something to do with us, and then having to bring it back into, their sort of daily grind. So the consistency piece has definitely been the most challenging part.
Mm. Do you think that as you were implementing this, that any of your supervisors or managers or leaders at any level in the organization internally, if not externally, push back on this? We're like, yeah, that's nice, but it's not really necessary. Like,
I
did you
think
did
the
you encounter any of
2
that?
I think the 2 pushback would have been, really about, "Oh, this is just the next shiny thing."
Right.
'Cause,
And the flavor of
I
the month
mean,
right here. That's right.
flavor of the month, yeah, and I mean, we read a lot of books, we get a lot of training, we spend a lot of time trying to, reinvest and so people can get a little like, "What book are you reading now?" And then, we'll kind of drop and say, "Oh, I'm reading this." And people inside, they're like, "Okay, so in about 6 months, we're gonna see something new that we have to do." So I think there was originally a little bit of, not spoken, but question about what does this mean in terms of work for me?
Mhm.
And then the only other pushback is anytime we change a system, anytime we implement something new, there's always a little bit of, I don't know if I'd call it pushback, but pause, which is appropriate from sort of our integrators where they're saying, now hold on, before you go there, I have a lot of questions and I want to make sure because I don't want to have to change this again when you visionaries have a new idea. And so I think we just had a little bit of pause there and really thinking through what the systems would be, what resources we would be pulling. So I would say it was appropriate pushback in that way.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's helpful because a lot of people who are listening maybe like, "Hey, I've read the book, taken the assessment. I'd love to see this implemented, but I don't know where to start."
Mm.
And my team may give me some pushback too. If you were sitting across a coffee table from one of these folks, what would you love to tell
Well, I'd say start, period.
them? Good
Because
advice.
that's the problem, right? Is you won't know unless you actually work with it and try it. So at some point you have to actually just take the leap and take the risk. So beyond that, I would say really just starting with yourself because that's what we did. You've got to get a few people that are really passionate about it and you can't just ask somebody else to implement it. You have to do it yourself first. And if you're willing to do that, it will just sort of naturally go from there. That's at least been our experience. We were passionate about it, we were excited about it. And one of the first things that we did after I went through the training, we have an event that we hold every year. We call it Compass Giving because it's at Thanksgiving time. And it's an expensive event for us because anybody that is part of our sort of office team, so not our field staff, but it's a big group of people supervising and doing the support behind the scenes. We bring them all together from all the regions. So there's travel and it's a really big event. And we used that opportunity to introduce this concept. And we did sort of a launch and did a little training, and it was really fun. And one of the things that we did is we took the time to make some guesses because we hadn't been doing the surveys at that time about what we thought people's language of appreciation might be. And every person received some kind of gift of appreciation during that training, and it was specific to what we thought. So if they were quality time, their thing that they opened was a coupon for something with their supervisor that we thought that they would, find that they would value that. And if they were gifts, we had a little gift for them. And so they got to experience it right there. And I think that left an impression. And so we started with what we could, manage at the time. And because they saw us, I mean, we just kind of sat back excited watching that happen. And your enthusiasm and your buy in is contagious.
Mm. Hmm. What great ideas and what great advice. I think that's so true. It's gonna ripple down from your
Hmm.
level of excitement and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Well, Melanie, this has been so helpful. I know for our listeners today, and certainly an encouragement for me as I've heard you talk about y'all's experience with this material. I know people are going to want to stay connected to you and learn more from you and about what Compass is doing. But what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, we'll definitely share some links with you, but we do offer consulting for other organizations that provide services to folks with disabilities. And that would be a great way to reach out and connect. We also offer some kind of interesting mastermind experiences where we're trying to just learn from each other. So that would be a great way as well. But people can just reach out to me directly and I'll make sure I give you that contact information.
I love it. We'll have those links in the show notes.
Great.
Melanie, thank you for your time and for sharing your insight and experience so generously today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.